Welcome back everyone, it's Aric from Aric, and today I'm going to be showing off my current deck list for the new Charizard VSTAR. Now, I know Charizard is one of those Pokemon that historically hasn't had the greatest cards, if I'm just being honest, but the new Brilliant Star set is giving us actually a lot of fire support, which made me want to actually try this out and see if there was more to Charizard VSTAR than just being a way for Pokemon to ring out your wallet, essentially. So that's what we have going on here today. But if you guys do wind up enjoying this deck profile, be sure to leave a like on this video, help get this video seen by more people. And with that being said, let's jump in and see how this deck is going to look. So up first, we do have 3 Charizard V, and we are choosing to play the new one from the Brilliant Star set, just because it has the Incinerate attack for 2 fire and a colorless does 90, and then you discard all of the tools from your opponent's active before doing damage. Nothing too groundbreaking, but I do think this is slightly better at least than the old Charizard V back from Darkness Ablaze. But of course, the star of the show is going to be the new Charizard VSTAR that we're also getting in this set. So it is one of these new Pokemon VSTAR. It's basically a Pokemon V that evolves, but still only gives up 2 prizes instead of the 3 that Pokemon V Max do. But this guy has 280 HP, making it one of the beefier V-Stars that are going to be released. And Charizard here has 2 different attacks. The first attack for 2 fire and a colorless does 130. And if you have any damage counters on Charizard, we do 100 more damage. And that's going to be one of the key mechanics that we're going to be seeing with fire Pokemon after this set. We have the new Magma Basin Stadium card that, of course, I'm going to show off in just a second. That'll help accelerate energy and put damage counters on our Pokemon. So fulfilling this really isn't going to be that hard. But 260 actually is kind of a decent number in this new format, since Pokemon VSTAR have around 250 to 280 HP. And with something like a Choice Belt, we can actually bump that number up to be able to one-shot any of the V-Stars that are running around. But Charizard does have another attack here. This is going to be its V-Star power. It's a once per game effect we can use. But for 3 fire energy and a colorless is 320, and we discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. So it's cool we have an attack here that can deal with Pokemon V-Star and, of course, anything weaker than that. And then also another attack that we can use on Pokemon V Max as well. But Charizard VSTAR is a pretty big resource hog. We're going to need some other attackers that can more easily get in some chip damage. And so the first one we do have in the deck is going to be 2 copies of also the new Moltres coming out in this set. So Moltres is kind of like the Hoopa that we have right now, or kind of like the old Zapdos back from Team Up, but has this single energy attack. It does 20 plus 70 more if we have any damage counters on Moltres, and this damage is not affected by weakness. Again, with a Magma Basin, we can easily power this thing up and get it ready to go. And Moltres actually provides a couple different uses. 90 damage is a solid number to pick off low HP Pokemon like Sobbles as an example, but also it does help us 2-shot Pokemon V Max, because if we come in with Charizard's first attack to do 260, well, just one attack from Moltres afterwards is going to be enough to clean up a knockout, especially if we've already used our V-Star power in a game. And because Moltres only attacks for a single energy, we can attach for turn to maybe our Charizard and then use Magma Basin to get an energy on the Moltres and get in some chip damage while we're trying to get set up. And another new attacker that we have in the deck is going to be 1 copy of the new Entei V. Entei V will look pretty familiar. It's kind of like the Suicune V that we've had in the format for a little while now, but instead of being a water Pokemon, it's a fire Pokemon. Same ability, same attack here as well for a fire and colorless, does 20 times the amount of bench Pokemon in play. And of course, its ability also allows us to draw a card. Now, even though Entei V is weaker than something like Charizard VSTAR, what I like about it is that damage-wise and attack cost-wise, it sits very nicely in between Moltres and our VSTAR. Because it's not always easy to get 3 energy down on a Charizard VSTAR in the same turn. So sometimes we need an attacker that can get up and running a little bit quicker, that can still hit for a solid chunk of damage. Up next from there though, we have 1 copy of Crobat V in the deck. Of course, to draw until we have 6 whenever we bench it. But I'm also playing a copy of Kricketune V in the deck as well. One thing I've kind of found with this list, it tends to be very combo oriented, and Kricketune's ability can be a nice way at perpetually giving you options to keep digging every single turn of the game. So its ability does allow you to draw up to 3 cards in your hand, but if it's your active, we can draw up to 4 instead. And since Magma Basin accelerates energy onto our bench, we want a solid Pokemon to be able to promote anytime something gets knocked out. I think Kricketune actually does a really good job of that. The next new card we have in the deck is going to be 1 copy of Lumineon V, one of my favorite new cards coming out in the new Brilliant Star set. It kind of fills a similar role as Kricketune, and Crobat's another one of these multi-prize support Pokemon, but whenever we bench it from hand, we can search your deck for any supporter card, kind of like the old Tabalugi GX. So of course, this does allow us to search for straightforward things like Professor's Research, Marnie, Boss's Orders, but we are playing Raihan in this deck as well, and Lumineon's going to give us an out to be able to find Raihan on those specific turns that we're looking to play it. And for the last Pokemon in the list, we have one copy of the new Manaphy as well, just to give us a little bit of bench protection with things like Rapid Strike, Urshifu, and Jolteon running around. Charizard is a pretty big resource hog, and most of the time we're only accelerating 1 extra energy per turn. So I think this deck is slightly slower than some of those bench sniping decks like Jolteon and Rapid Strike Urshifu. So I want to have a way at maybe protecting our bench a little bit while we're trying to get set up in the early game. So that's going to be all of the Pokemon in this list, guys, but I actually do want to give a quick plug. If you're hungry for some more Charizard content after this video is over, I actually dropped a bonus article for our patrons that details some additional deck building options and tech Pokemon that you could potentially run in your Charizard VSTAR deck. I think there's quite a few different ways you could take building your Pokemon line with this archetype. So if you guys want to check that out, I will have a link down below in the description. But heading on to our trainer cards, we have 4 copies of Professor's Research, discard our hand, draw 7, and we want fire energy in the discard to fuel our stadium card, so research just makes a ton of sense here. And our other main draw supporter staple of the format, Marnie, we are playing 3 copies of this one. You know, it doesn't allow you to dig quite as deep as research, but I do like Marnie because we're playing Cricketune. You know, even though we don't see as many cards, we can still play down our hand probably a little bit easier, and then just refill it with Cricketune anyways. We also have 3 copies of Bossasaurus to choose what we want to take knockouts on. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier as well, we also have 2 copies of Raihan. Raihan is one of my favorite supporters and really pairs nicely with Charizard VSTAR here. So of course we can only use Raihan if one of our Pokemon was knocked out on our opponent's last turn, but we get to accelerate an energy out of the discard pile to one of our Pokemon and search our deck for any card. Something gets knocked out, we play Raihan maybe after grabbing Lumineon V, but then we attach for turn, accelerate energy with the Raihan, and use Magma Basin, and that's going to allow us to cheat 3 energy into play, powering up Charizard VSTAR out of nowhere. But as I mentioned a few times, we of course have 4 copies of Magma Basin. This is going to be sort of the lifeblood of this deck, this new Stadium card that's coming out in Brilliant Stars. Once during our turn, we can accelerate a fire energy from discard to one of our bench fire Pokemon, and then put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. This is the card that makes our deck tick. 4 copies ensures we can find this when we need it, and also helps us bump Path to the Peak, which is going to be a card that could really be annoying for a deck like ours, since we are focusing pretty heavily on these ability-based multi-prize Pokemon like Crobat, Lumineon, etc. But heading into our item cards, we have 4 copies of Quick Ball, of course, to find our basic Pokemon, and also, of course, allows us to discard fire energy in the process. But next from there, we have 4 copies of Ultra Ball, finally coming back into the format, and man, does this card feel good in a deck like this. We discard 2 cards from our hand and search our deck for a Pokemon. So of course, we can pitch away fire energy, and not only can we grab our basics, but we can also grab our Pokemon VSTAR in the process. Next up, we have 2 copies of Switch, pretty self-explanatory. We have to accelerate energy onto bench Pokemon, so we do need ways at maneuvering our Pokemon around. But that being said, we also have 2 copies of Escape Rope as well. Galarian Weezing has actually become kind of a popular Pokemon in recent memory, and its ability does shut off all of our abilities while it's in the active spot. So I want to play at least a couple copies of Escape Rope to give us an out against decks like that if they still remain to be popular after Brilliant Stars releases. Up next from there, though, we have 2 copies of Air Balloon to round out our retreating options. Air Balloon, of course, a Pokemon tool that gives our Pokemon 2 less retreat. This is especially good on cards like Cricketune, that way whenever something gets knocked out, or if we have a switch in hand, we can switch into our Cricketune, have an Air Balloon on it, draw until we have 4, then retreat into our attacker for turn. And our other Pokemon tool card of the deck is going to be 2 copies of the new Choice Belt here. Choice Belt, fantastic new card that we're getting in Brilliant Stars. But the Pokemon it's attached to does 30 more damage to Pokemon V. As I kind of mentioned, that does fix our math a little bit for Charizard VSTAR, and of course can still help with our other attackers too, like Entei and Moltres. Up next from there, though, we have 3 copies of Cram-O-Matic. This is going to be one of the more flexible spots I think that is in the deck right now. But the reason for Cram-O-Matic is that the games where I couldn't find my Magma Basin turn 1 felt really bad. And even though we're playing 4, we don't really have a great way at searching it out. It says you discard an item card to play this card, and then you flip a coin. If heads, search your deck for any card and put it into your hand. Now, like I said, this is one of the more flexible inclusions I have in the deck right now. There are some other cards that fill kind of a similar role that I wouldn't mind trying out as well down the road. Cards like Rotom Foam plus the Sword and Shield Oranguru, or maybe even Turbo Patch as well. But as I mentioned, for the moment though, we are choosing to go with the Cram-O-Matic. But since we are playing Cram-O-Matic, we also have 2 copies of Energy Search in the deck. I originally had a higher count of fire energy, but we need item cards that we have to discard anyways. So changed a couple of those energies over to energy searches. So we still have the same amount of outs to fire energy in the deck, but now we have a few more cards that are eligible to be discarded with our Cram-O-Matics. And of course, energy search just searches our deck for an energy, puts it into our hand. So I will say, if you guys do end up cutting Cram-O-Matic, I think you can safely cut energy search. Just a quick heads up. And then from there, we have 10 copies of fire energy to round out our deck list. So I think that might seem a little bit lower than what you might expect for this deck, but like I said, you have to remember we do have the 2 copies of Energy Search as well, so effectively we still have 12 outs to fire energy in our deck. And between Raihan and 4 Magma Basins, we actually have quite a few ways at recycling those energies over and over. So that's going to be where I'm at currently with Charizard VSTAR. I do have to say, I was actually really skeptical of Charizard VSTAR before getting in some games with this thing. And I still kind of stand by this in a way, in a sense where I think Magma Basin really gets a bit worse once you start powering up Pokemon that have more than a 2 energy attack cost. But luckily Fire does have these other more energy efficient attackers like Entei and Moltres to kind of help you throughout the rest of the game while you're kind of struggling along to power up your Charizard VSTAR. So who knows, maybe we have the next somewhat playable Charizard on our hands here. But let me know your full thoughts, guys. What do you think about this deck list that we have? Are there any changes that you would make? And on that note, just a reminder, if you guys do want some more Charizard VSTAR content, I did drop an exclusive bonus article for our patrons detailing some additional draw engines and attackers you could potentially play. Link to that will be down below in the description. Or if you want a different way you can show your support, you can always just like this video or pick up some merch over at rarecandytcg.com. As I mentioned, links to everything will be down below in the description. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.